Welcome to North Korea, the land of military parades, an occasional famine. This guy, his nukes, the most spectacular technological failures, and the world's most powerful hackers?
They have the capability not only to infiltrate, but potentially to destroy data and systems.
Wait, this can't be right. When it comes to technology, North Korea often looks stuck back in the 1960s. How can this country have anything to do with hacking? Well, it's a complicated story, and one in which a lot of things aren't like they seem. We might even say there is some deception going on, like a play. So, welcome to the North Korean theater. If you were around a few years ago, you probably saw this. This is Axie, a fluffy creature from Axie Infinity, a video game that's supposed to be your chance to earn real money while playing. It was all the rage at the height of the NFT craze. Millions of people played it. Some even dropped their real jobs for that. And in March 2022, those players began experiencing something strange. It looked like a serious glitch. Some functionality went down, but surely somebody will fix that quickly, right? Nobody could fix it. You see, the game got so popular because it ties its in-game money to Ethereum. That Ethereum, the second biggest cryptocurrency after Bitcoin. These are not just in-game coins. They have a direct connection to real-world money. A couple of conversions, and your coins turn into real cash. The exchange mechanism is quite complicated, but it relies on a user-friendly platform called Ronin, a special service set up by the game's developers for easy transfers. And those problems experienced by the players in March 2022, they had everything to do with Ronin.
So yesterday, developers of the Ronin network announced through a blog post that they had discovered a hacker had stolen $540 million worth of cryptocurrency.
It was hacked. The whole system, an extensive network of computers put in place to ensure that the game's transactions were legitimate, was taken over. That allowed hackers to steal $600 million worth of in-game currency from the players. Then they converted that currency into Ethereum and ran off. All that remained was to launder the money. $600 million. At the time, it was the largest heist in history. It's still the largest heist if you consider how much the currency was worth at the time. Only sometime later were internet sleuths, professional investigators, the developers of Ronin and Axie, and everybody else were able to piece together a picture of what happened. And all of them arrived at the same conclusion. Who is the attacker? Well, you've probably guessed it. North Korea. This, North Korea, a country that is the butt of almost every joke on the planet, managed to steal $600 million from an NFT game. Ask a random person on the street how NFTs work, and they're going to struggle to explain it. But North Koreans, they understood it well enough to hack the entire system and get away with hundreds of millions. Well, you see, this wasn't North Korea's first rodeo. The country did some crime before. No big deal, you might think. Countries sometimes just do crime. Smuggling weapons, forging documents, things like that. You've seen the movies, you know how this works. Nearly all countries dabble in this at least a bit, for all kinds of reasons. If they don't want big problems, they tread carefully and avoid overdoing it. But there's one country that just does not care about problems. Yes, that's North Korea. And when you don't care about problems to the North Korean degree, crime can get a little out of control. North Korea is absolutely, without a doubt, in a league of its own when it comes to breaking international law. You might think the one country you don't like does it a lot, but compared to North Korea, even that is peanuts. The North Koreans did it all, trafficking weapons and cigarettes, poaching endangered animals, producing counterfeit drugs, illegal drugs, very illegal drugs, trafficking very, very illegal drugs, manufactured by others, trafficking people, selling people, kidnapping and trafficking people, and of course, trafficking people to conduct slave labor. In the 1980s and 90s, it even engaged in forging dollar bills, and did that so well that American intelligence agencies called those super dollars because their quality was actually better than that of real dollars manufactured in the United States. But then, by the 2000s, this kind of activity began to die down. It still happened, and even today, an occasional North Korean illegal arms sale still gets busted here and there. But these days, the communist criminal empire is just a shadow of its former self. Or so it would seem, because on some level, it's actually bigger than ever. The only difference is that the things North Koreans traffic no longer look like this, or this. Quite often, those things took a shape a tad more complicated. But printing fake money is one thing. Hacking an extremely, stupendously complicated crypto system is just something else. So, how did that happen? To answer this question, we have to learn 2 Korean words. I promise they're easy, and unlike some, we won't go after you if you don't practice them every day. One of those words is juche. It's the state ideology of North Korea and the idea that a truly independent country should be completely self-reliant. It has to provide everything it needs itself. International trade networks, complex agreements, and supply chains, those are evil and have to be eradicated. Well, maybe a country can trade with a small circle of close socialist allies a bit, but it certainly can't have anything to do with those evil capitalists and their dangerous ideas. Think about juche what you will, but practice shows that it is not very compatible with decent living standards. The North Korean middle class lives in what would be considered abject poverty in the rest of the world. Things like running water and personal transportation are an unreachable luxury. Food shortages are a daily occurrence, and hard, manual labor is the primary pastime for people of all ages. The internet? Well, it exists in theory, or rather, in propaganda, where North Korean students sit by the computers doing something.
We saw one guy looking at the Google homepage, but he wasn't searching for anything. He was just staring blankly at the screen.
For most North Koreans, electricity is the only sign that the Industrial Revolution actually happened, although even that is strictly rationed. The grid doesn't work for most of the day, and when it does, it serves to power radios that blast propaganda that can't be turned off. By some estimates, the size of the North Korean economy is comparable to that of Afghanistan, a country ravaged by decades of war. Oh, and there's one other thing. The poverty in North Korean citizens is not even the biggest problem juche creates for Kim here. You see, adhering to this ideology is a bit like living on a remote farm and refusing to interact with the outside world. On the surface, everything might look okay. You control your own life and maintain your own shelter. If you're lucky enough, you have a surplus of food to sustain yourself. But if you grow bored of the same old meals and decide you want to taste something more exotic, you're suddenly out of luck. You're even more out of luck if you just had a poor harvest, and if your farm workers catch a nasty disease or even worse, decide to rise up and overthrow you, the trouble becomes very, very acute. You can't get high-tech weapons to protect yourself from adversaries. You can't enjoy the newest technological advances made elsewhere in the world. And you don't get to destroy your health with those corrupt capitalist snacks they make on the other side of the ocean. The North Korean government understands that very well. This is why, while it touts juche as the best thing since Kim Il-sung's invention of sliced bread, in reality, it's totally fine with this isolationist approach. One of those liberties is dabbling in international crime. Another liberty is songbun, the second North Korean word we have to learn. You know how in communist countries all the people have to be equal, but then some are more equal than others? Well, in North Korea, this principle is basically the unspoken law. Songbun is a rigid, semi-official class system the North Korean society lives by. It divides all citizens into 3 categories, although each of those categories can be divided further. At the very bottom of this system is the hostile class, and according to the government, the hostiles don't even deserve to know the name of Kim Il-sung, let alone employ any technology beyond their own 2 hands. The wavering, or the middle class, is the one we've already talked about: manual labor, radios you can't turn off, and life in poverty. And then there's the core, or the upper class, where life looks very different. The core is a class that the North Korean government relies on. Well, the entire government belongs to that class, so it's a given. The army brass, the top managers, and all the other important North Koreans are members of the core. This class has access to a lot of goods one might expect while living in a run-of-the-mill country. Not a very rich one, but not a very poor one either. For example, this is a North Korean computer shop. It has TVs, washing machines, coffee makers, and yes, computers. Not very new ones, mind you. Most of these things are smuggled through an international blockade, and the prices are far beyond the reach of most North Koreans. Also, all of them will most likely have the Red Star installed, a proprietary North Korean operating system that looks like old Windows or Mac OS, tracks everything the user does, and only allows connecting to the North Korean version of the internet, a completely enclosed network that bears little resemblance to the actual internet. But all of that is for the regular members of the core. And what if you want the best stuff, like Kim himself, who always poses with the latest Mac? Well, then you have to climb the ladder even higher, because the core class has its own core, the elite of the elite, the 1% of the 1%, and North Koreans that belong to that class live in luxury. Restrictions, shortages, borders, those are things for common folk. Food, technology, even media, the very top of Songbun has it all. International sanctions be damned. In many cases, they even get to travel the world on forged passports, more often than not. And they're the ones Kim relies on when he needs to exchange some of his criminal money for goods, tech, or whatever else can be found on the black market. Uranium enrichment centrifuges, for example. Alright, that's the end of our lesson about North Korean language and culture. Just remember, there's Juche ideology and Songbun social systems. And those things aren't really compatible with each other, because while lower class have to be content with self-reliance, the upper class needs their Macs, snacks, and nukes. And hacking? Well, it sits at the very center of this conundrum. It's one of the main ways the North Korean government maintains Songbun and circumvents Juche. And the way how it does that is quite interesting, but before explaining it, I have to ask you for two things. First, could you please like this video and subscribe to our channel for the greater cause? And second, oh, he left. Well, never mind. Let's go back to the video. Have you ever seen North Korean children playing musical instruments? Like this, and this, and this. On the one hand, yeah, it's a bit creepy. On the other hand, these children are, geniuses. They have mastered their art to the level very few adults in the rest of the world will ever achieve. How? Well, North Korea loves gifted children. This is how it manages to have a truly incredible music scene, punch way above its economic weight in sports, and perform pretty well in other kinds of international competitions. Children from the middle class, and perhaps sometimes even the hostel class, are closely monitored. If they display talent in music, sports, or any kind of science, they're selected and given rigorous training. They can't choose their own career. But to be fair, their less talented friends don't have this option either. What these children can have, though, is an opportunity to rise. They get the best education their country can offer, and strict punishment for every failure. They can briefly go abroad to various competitions, and in the event they succeed, their social standing improves. And this is not just computer science.
It doesn't matter whether it's sports, whether it's science, whether it's languages, whatever skill there is, whatever North Korea thinks will help serve the state's purposes. If they find someone at an early age who has some degree of talent in that, then they will get a chance to advance. They will be brought in, given extra training, given extra resources.
But in the case of math geniuses, there's one particular career path that they can get: earning money abroad. North Korea has been doing that for decades with the plethora of criminal ventures we discussed. And one of those ventures, as you may remember, was slave labor. North Koreans would be sent off to do everything from laying bricks in the Middle East to cutting wood in Siberia. But if they can do that, maybe they could get some higher paying jobs? This realization struck North Korea in the 2000s. Everything digital was, like the bomb. Jobs in the IT sector became some of the most prestigious and could net serious profit. Spend a few years learning programming or web design, and you'd find yourself earning more money than an entire team of lumberjacks. Of course, building an IT industry, even a small one, inside North Korea was impossible. North Korea's internet connections are closely monitored, and any detected breach of international sanctions would risk grave consequences. But that's where the idea of sending laborers abroad comes in again. Get some math geniuses forged passports, fly them to a country with badly supervised borders, and there you go, an army of expat IT workers. We know of at least several cases where this model was applied and entire establishments to support them were created. One of those establishments looked like this: a budget hotel in Shenyang, China. It operated as an actual, real hotel, with surprisingly good amenities for real guests. But most of its guests weren't, well, customers. They were North Koreans who worked there, using local internet access.
We spoke to someone who'd actually stayed there, an individual, US individual who had it booked as his sort of corporate, accommodation for his trip to China. And when he walked in, he found a whole bunch of North Koreans, and the TVs on the wall were showing sort of footage of the war in North Korea, the war in Korea, I should say, but done from the North Korean side as though the Koreans won that war. Very, very peculiar.
With time, the establishment came to be known as Hacker Hotel. Because, sure, sending well-educated workers to earn money by doing remote office work is a good enough way to make some cash. But if you don't have qualms about abiding by the law, there are some ways to earn vastly more money, very, very quickly. It didn't start like that, though. Early North Korean hacking operations were all about prestige and a bit about espionage. In the mid-2000s, they began carefully attacking South Korea, mostly jamming its services with distributed denial-of-service attacks. Those didn't do long-lasting damage, but proved to be quite an annoyance. By the mid-2010s, these hackers went fully international, and this time, they meant business. In 2014, they hacked Sony as revenge for the release of a film that makes fun of Kim Jong-un, and executed a data heist that showed excellent understanding of both technical and social aspects of hacking. But those aspects helped them immensely with the task most countries use their hacking armies for: espionage.
They've been known to target defense companies, both in countries that they don't get along with, and also sometimes in friendly countries like Russia. Last year, they seemingly tried to steal missile data from a Russian missile manufacturer. That sort of information is very important for their weapons development. And beyond that, they will also target researchers, they will target strategy, they will target government organizations around the world because they want to understand policy decisions.
But the same techniques work against commercial entities as well, so why not commercialize it? In the late 2010s, North Koreans went all in on that, hacking banks, distributing ransomware, performing these massive operations only a state-sponsored hacker army could pull off. A few years passed, and crypto became a thing. An entire monetary system designed to circumvent the controls of governments and institutions? Who could have guessed that it would become popular with criminals? And who could have guessed that somebody like North Korea could jump in on exploiting it with such enthusiasm? The twist, as you might have guessed, is that North Korea went a step beyond just using crypto. Robbing other crypto users blind was also on the menu. For several years in a row now, it's estimated that around half of cryptocurrency thefts in the world are the work of North Korean hacking groups. The Axie Infinity hack was the largest and the most prominent of them, but countless smaller ones happen almost every month.
And by the way, North Korea denies that hack and all of the other hacks attributed to it. North Korea says this is a smear campaign by its enemies, including the US.
Are we certain these attacks were done by North Koreans? Let's be clear, cybercrime attribution is a tricky business. Digital footprints are exactly that. They're digital. They can be manipulated, misplaced, forged, and simply erased. But in every one of those cases, and in thousands more, there is more than enough evidence to suggest that the attacks were performed by North Korean hacking groups that operate outside the country under some false identities and shell companies.
Mr. Creator is using your Upwork or LinkedIn account to scam people. You get 10% of these fraudulent earnings if he actually does pay you, but all of the scam is under your LinkedIn account, which is under your name, or your Upwork account, which is under your name, because to sign up for these services, you need to have ID verification.
There's been research by the United Nations and other watch groups that are working with the global community to prevent them from gaining access to weapons. And a good amount of the money that they've converted into fiat currency has been traced to purchases of materials to build their missiles program.
Of course, there's still a lot of details we don't know. As you might expect, the closer you examine the structure of North Korea's hacker army, the murkier it gets. We know about the payloads they use, the hours they operate, even the locations of some operations. But beyond that lies quite a mystery.
Typically, they will operate under the Reconnaissance General Bureau. Now, within that, there's a lot of disagreement on how things are structured. a particular bureau associated with technologies called the Third Bureau, which is responsible, some people say, for foreign intelligence. Some people say it was for technical reconnaissance. And as a result, a lot of cyber groups operate under these bureaus and another entity called Lab 110, which some view as a reorganization of a previous bureau responsible for cybercrime. We don't know how this is, and even during the pandemic, there have been reports that cybercrime operations have been reorganized. What we do know for sure is that within these bureaus, operating under them are many different cyber criminals, many different threat groups, and we know them by different names. Lazarus, Kimsuki, Andariel, Blue Norov.
So what we know for sure is that the North Korean government collects the most talented and dedicated people among its population, trains them, invests in them, and turns them into talented hackers. We know they mostly operate under the pretense of false identities and shell companies outside of the country under the watchful eye of the North Korean military. We also know they have a surprising amount of freedom in how they operate. A great illustration of that is in the latest invention of these hackers, the job by proxy scheme. Here's how it works. North Korean agents contact people from the US or Europe and get them to apply for IT jobs. Those Americans or Europeans don't really work, North Koreans do, but the employer has no idea about that. Worst case scenario, the hacker earns a lot of money. Best case, they get exclusive access to the systems of some large companies, stealing their secrets. This, just like a lot of other attacks North Korea performs, is not just a job that requires technical skill. What it requires is exquisite mastery of social engineering. Convincing phishing messages, scam calls, fake websites, the vast majority of hacks begin this way. That's not to say they lack technical skill, quite the opposite. And on top of it all, they're extremely, extremely good at innovating.
They're extremely sophisticated, and they stay ahead of the changing crypto technology more than most in the crypto enthusiast world. They are often, one step ahead or alongside, the best and brightest in the crypto investigative world. And they're continuously experimenting with new ways to either steal money or make money off of crypto schemes or launder funds. We've seen them dabbling in mining. We've seen them dabbling in NFTs. We've seen them dabbling in Monero, as you mentioned, and bits of ways that they can move money or gain access to money out of crypto.
There is one more problem, though. Those hackers have to get a taste of the outside world. They even have to learn how it works. After all, they will be the ones doing everything from scam calls to leveraging the subtleties of the crypto market. And after they learn about the outside world, even train in the Western way of life, they might get a bit difficult to control. This is where the class system comes in again. For one, those hackers aren't too different from the regular elite who travel the world, enjoy the internet, and eat all of the potato chips they want. In fact, the math geniuses might even come from the elite class, or get motivated with the prospect of joining it, if the money-grabbing adventure ends up being successful enough. So, the North Korean hacking business is a nasty feedback loop. It props up the social hierarchy, helps the country to sustain its elite class. But that elite class also makes the whole hacking endeavor possible. And what if the whole social coercion scheme fails? What if the thought of defecting still crosses the hacker's mind? There are the usual sticks: total surveillance, a threat of execution, and the prospect of demoting the entire family of the misbehaving hacker to the undesirable class. And of course, there's the greatest deterrent of them all: apathy.
One of the interesting things that I saw a description of inside North Korea was a bunch of university students who were looking at the internet, the open internet, and they were told to go away and research and find out, I don't know, the height of the Empire State Building or something like that. So they can see New York, they can see the Empire State Building, they can see Manhattan. But beyond that, they had no inquisitiveness. They didn't want to know, well, what is New York like, and where is the Empire State Building, and what is Central Park, and how do these people live? There was no inquisitiveness. They simply saw the internet as a window into a world they would never visit. So that idea of inquisitiveness about the outside world is stamped down on from birth in North Korea.
And it's possible that there's something else North Korea stamps out. Do you remember the first time you heard of North Korean hackers? What was your reaction? Weren't you convinced that it's impossible, that North Korea can't have anything to do with hacking? A country where most of the population lives in poverty and exclusion, running one of the most sophisticated, well-organized, and impactful hacking operations in the whole world? This idea sounds absurd. Two stories that don't mesh with each other very well. And yet, when you dig deeper, they don't only coexist, they complement each other. But making that idea sound absurd, stamping out any inquisitiveness about the criminal empire of the North Korean regime, that's quite a strategy. Convincing the rest of the world that you don't pose any danger, and you're just a hermit kingdom full of poverty, naive propaganda, a slightly mad leader, and his weird obsession with nukes that don't even work most of the time. Sounds quite ingenious. To be fair, we don't know if this is on purpose, or just a happy coincidence the North Korean regime loves to exploit. But we sincerely hope that after watching this video, you won't fall for it, because you've learned something new about the world. Thank you for watching. This video was brought to you by an entire team of people here at Cybernews. They'd love to know if you enjoyed it, so don't hesitate to express your sentiments through a like, a comment, or maybe even a press of the subscribe button. This means a lot to us, and again, thank you. See you next time.